Welcome to Booked, where two guys tell you about the books they're reading. I'm Rob Olson.
And I'm Livius Nedden. This week, we're going to be doing something. I guess we've done this before, right? Kind of throwback episodes, reviewing something a little older. But we're going way back this time to, I guess I don't even know what year. We're reviewing the first James Bond book, Casino Royale.
Yeah, it's got to go back pretty far because I'm looking a little bit ahead to when we talk about his bio, and it said he died in 1964. So this book is definitely probably one of the least fresh ones we've ever talked about.
Yeah, 1953, by the way. I think the Three Musketeers might be the only one that was older, and that was like 1951 or something. I don't know. It was a long time ago.
Before we jump into talking about the book, I just want to acknowledge the weird timing of. So we posted our year in review episode super late, and so I just want to lay out. We recorded that episode on January 5th, and then January 6th, some really, really fucked up stuff happened in the world, and that's typically I edit the episode the day after we record it, and so. You know, not surprisingly, I wasn't super in the mood, and so I just kind of left it for a few days, and we took a week off because it was just I don't know, everybody reacts differently to these types of things, but like I was just not in a mindset to like think about those types of things at the moment, so we took a week off. But in that interim week, I edited and posted our year in review, so it was super late because an absolutely insane and unpredictable like world event kind of threw me out of my rhythm for a little bit. So apologies for that. But we are back and we're ready to talk about an old ass spy novel.
He's ready to talk about it. I'm ready to read this goddamn author bio. I don't even have to be kind, right? Because the guy's been gone for 40 years at this point. 60 years. Yeah, almost 60. So
yeah, right. He were you alive when he died?
I was not.
Just kidding. Sorry.
I know. That's okay. I do believe this might be the longest bio we've ever read, so skip forward like a minute if you don't care about the bio. Ian Fleming was born in London on May 28, 1908. He was educated at Eton College and later spent a formative period studying languages in Europe. His first job was with Reuters news agency, where a Moscow posting gave him first-hand experience with what would become his literary bête noire, the Soviet Union. During World War II, he served as assistant to the director of naval intelligence and played a key role in Allied espionage operations. I'm sorry, I almost broke up there because I was thinking about he was assistant director.
Assistant to the regional manager.
Yeah, exactly. So. After the war, he worked as foreign manager of the Sunday Times, a job that allowed him to spend 2 months each year in Jamaica. Here in 1952, at his home Goldeneye, he wrote a book called Casino Royale, and James Bond was born. The first print run sold out within a month. For the next 12 years, Fleming produced a novel a year featuring Special Agent 007, the most famous spy of the century. His travels, interests, and wartime experience lent authority to everything he wrote. Raymond Chandler described him as the most forceful and driving writer of thrillers in England. Sales soared when President Kennedy named the fifth title, From Russia with Love, one of his favorite books. The Bond novels have sold more than 100 million copies worldwide, boosted by the hugely successful film franchise that began in 1962 with the release of Dr. No. He married Anne Rothermere in 1952. His story about a magical car, written in 1961 for their only son, Caspar, went on to become the well-loved novel and film Chitty Chitty Bang Bang. Fleming died of heart failure on August 12, 1964, at the age of 56. A couple of things jumped out at me about this. So first, that he had a home called Goldeneye, which eventually became, I'm assuming, a Bond novel. I don't have a list of the novels in front of me. But the fact that he lived in Jamaica is might be a little important because I did recently watch Dr. No, the, I don't know, whatever, 1962 release of Dr. No, and that takes place in Jamaica. So it seems like he really was tying in his personal experience and his personal life into a lot of these stories.
Yeah, I didn't know that Chitty Chitty Bang Bang thing. That kind of caught me.
Yeah. I didn't know that either, but I'm surprised it didn't mention in the bio that he also happened to have a magical car.
Right. Yeah, exactly. Here's the synopsis for Casino Royale. In the novel that introduced James Bond to the world, Ian Fleming's Agent 007 is dispatched to a French casino in Royale les Eaux. His mission? Bankrupt a ruthless Russian agent who's been on a bad luck streak at the Baccarat table. Oh, we get to talk about gambling, Livius. It's going to be nice for you.
Mm-hmm.
One of Smersh's most deadly operatives. That reminds me of, you've seen the Blues Brothers?
I mean, movie? I think you know the answer to this, right?
You have not?
No, I take that back. Not to got off the track here. Our art teacher in the 7th or 8th grade, I forget, made us watch it because he was an extra in it, and I really didn't pay much attention.
All right, so I'm really getting off track here, but in Blues Brothers, there was a system, like a database that the police used called SCMODS, SCMODS, and I don't remember what it stands for, but Smersh sounds just as like ridiculous and not cool as SCMODS. All right, so one of Smersh's most deadly operatives, the man known only as Le Chiffre, has been a prime target of the British Secret Service for years. If Bond can wipe out his bankroll, Le Chiffre will likely be retired, in quote marks, retired, by his paymasters in Moscow. But what if the cards won't cooperate? After a brutal night at the gaming tables, Bond soon finds himself dodging would-be assassins, fighting off brutal torturers, and going all in to save the life of his beautiful female counterpart, Vesper Lynd. Taut, tense, and effortlessly stylish, Ian Fleming's inaugural James Bond adventure has all the hallmarks that made the series a touchstone for a generation of readers.
This could be a tough one to talk about because I feel like some people will this will show up in their feed or they'll search sometimes for James Bond and they'll be like, oh, these guys are going to talk about James Bond. I love James Bond. Yeah, there's a lot to talk about this book and probably about expectations and a variety of other things. But I think we'll probably just jump right into the story. We'll go as far as we deem reasonable with that, and then maybe we'll kind of come away with some of our thoughts. So, yeah, I mean the synopsis kind of says it all. It's kind of starts off with a report about this Le Chiffre guy who's working for, like the Russians. They think like they're not really, really sure, he's like absconded with some of their money, and it seems like he's making a play to increase this amount of money and then kind of disappear off the face of the earth. And I say seems like and stuff because some of this was super unclear to me while I was reading it. What some of the like behind the scenes things that were happening weren't very clear to me. Did you feel that way?
Yeah, to a degree. I think for me it was more being kind of mired in terminology and stuff like that, or like maybe the language of the time.
Yeah, and that was the other thing, and I know we'll talk about some of our individual ratings, but yeah, there were just words I didn't understand. There were times where words were said in foreign languages where there was no bother to translate to English. So yeah, I felt a little fuzzy, but that's the gist of it is, and it says it right in the synopsis. If Bond can wipe out this guy's bankroll, he's going to be killed by Smersh.
Fucking Smersh. I'll just get it out of the way because I've been making fun of Smersh. Apparently, like, the explanation is that, like, that is a combination of two Russian words that means death to spies, basically, and so they identify this part of the Russian spy organization as being the ones who, like, kind of root out like the shitty spies, double agents, kind of stuff like that. So it's like the spy cops, I guess, in a way. They're spies, but they just get rid of like the bad ones. But yes, Smersh, not a sexy name at all.
No. And again, dependent. I don't know if in the 50s that would have come off as crude as it does now.
Hey, in the 50s, our podcast might have been called Smersh.
Smershed. Smirched. So basically James Bond is called in. So after this evidence is presented to M, who everybody who's ever seen a James Bond movie will know is the agent who directs 007 to different missions. So he's called in, and that's where we're introduced essentially to M and Moneypenny, who is another fixture in the Bond series, and he is given the directive to go take Le Chiffre's money. The audiobook of this has to be a nightmare. That's all I'm saying.
Yeah, there's definitely like, yeah, because he has to go to, it's France, right? It's by Nice. It's like in the south of France or whatever. Mm-hmm. Royale les Eaux, which means like Royale of the water or by the water or whatever. Mm-hmm. Anyway,
not a real place, by the way. I did actually look that up. It's not an actual casino. I should say the casino. I don't know if that location is real.
Which actually, you know what? Now that we say that, I think it's good to point out that our discussion will be pretty much entirely just about the book. I know that there's some people who have seen the James Bond film with Daniel Craig, Casino Royale, which does actually kind of like deviate pretty heavily from the story in the book, including, I think the location is more like Monaco or whatever. Not Monaco. What's the really fancy like place you go gambling?
So isn't it Monaco?
Is it Monaco? All right.
I think so.
Cool. So there's differences, but yeah, we're going to be talking just about the book. So one thing that I will kind of observe about the way the story is written is that it felt kind of stiff in a way. And if this is the dude's first novel, maybe it was just a man like kind of growing into his writing style. But it felt it felt a little cold. Like the beginning of the book introduced a lot of stuff through actually like epistolary methods of like, memos that were sent to people, and it's very expository and stuff. But even when they introduce like, oh, we need a gambler, this guy is, the guy who can't be beat. It's James Bond. And when they introduce him, it just felt really rigid and not like, not as like flowy as maybe it could have been for the introduction of a protagonist. So, and that kind of carried for me, that kind of carried out throughout the book, where it was, it just didn't feel as like sexy or adventurous as I expected from like probably one of the most well-known spy novels, that you could think of off the top of your head.
Yeah, I will deviate. I agree about it being stiff. I will deviate a little bit. I actually thought that reading the internal memo was a good way to kind of introduce the situation. I just, like I said, I felt like it was a little muddy. But I actually kind of like that as an addition, that we get to read the secret document where they make this decision instead of it just being kind of related relayed by another character.
Yeah. Yeah. That in itself wasn't bad. It was just, I guess it just wasn't what I was expecting. It worked. It worked fine. I mean, most of the novel worked fine, but it was, and then that has to maybe go to the fact that like, I have to imagine that many of the spy novels that came after this were inspired by this, but had their own kind of special things. So we might not have what we have without it. Anyway, it doesn't take long for Bond to get to Royale and to kind of rendezvous with. He knows he's going to meet another agent or another person who works for. What is it? Is it MI6? I don't even know what if it was even called it back then.
Yeah, he is. I believe so.
Oh no, it was called. Yeah. Anyway, we all know what I'm talking about. He's going to meet this woman who's basically like the money woman from MI6 or whatever. He knows he's going to rendezvous with someone else who has like more like local connections. And really, I mean, I feel like that he was into that stuff within 15% of the book. It was super fast to get into actually getting on location, and then like some kind of spy shit goes down. Like he checks into his room and like discovers, or like, it's revealed that he's being eavesdropped on through some like through like the chimney and stuff. So there's some spy shit that happens early on that I thought was pretty cool too.
Yeah, it was. Some of it is a little hard to come to terms with because everything is analog and obviously super low tech. And one of the issues, I guess, coming with a like strong sense of James Bond from having seen however many movies you may have seen, is that this is super low tech. The Bond gadgets do not make an appearance in this book.
Right.
So it clearly started sometime later. In the books, or maybe not at all in the books, and that was an addition for the movies. I like I mentioned, I did watch Dr. No recently in the last probably 6 or 8 weeks, and there's no Bond gadgets, but he is presented with a different firearm at the beginning of it, and I could see in that how that would then roll into movies and him getting more stuff, but that wasn't really a part of this. As Rob mentioned, he gets the Casino Royale. He meets his local contact. He's given 25,000 francs. I apologize. Probably about 3 weeks ago, I read this and I actually did the conversion. I think that was like roughly $120,000 today, somewhere around there. He's given an edict. So I take that back. He's given 20,000 francs. He's given an edict to win, 5,000 more to kind of make up the difference because they suspect that Le Chiffre has about that much. So they want to send Bond in on an even keel to take this guy out. And I've got to tell you, I've done a little bit of gambling in my life. That's a tough sell, man, to just send someone in with the expectation that you are going to win all of their money in a game and I'm not terribly familiar with Baccarat. I know you can still play it. It's never been an interest of mine, but it seems kind of like playing blackjack, essentially, where the goal is to get, the number 9 instead of 21. And I just thought this is like a really shitty plan. Like, it would have been so much easier for them just to put a bullet in this guy if they wanted to get rid of him than to, send 100,000, current dollars on a hope that you can beat somebody at a game that doesn't require skill. And it's mentioned in the book several times that this game is pure luck. There is no beating Baccarat. It's literally just luck.
Yeah, I agree. It does seem like a weird plot, like a weird foundation for the plot of a spy novel is like, this guy's down on his luck and he's trying to win back his money so he doesn't get murdered. So if you bankrupt him, he'll get murdered. Well, if that's the goal, like you said, just go shoot the guy. Like, especially since it doesn't take long into the book before they tell you that the 00 designation is because you've killed like a certain number of people. So that's why you get that designation is so that people know that you are proficient in, or at least experienced in, killing people. Mm-hmm. So yeah, that was a little bit of a tough pill to swallow.
I mean, that's my one big ding in plot is, I probably took off 3 points for the fact that this is just kind of a dumb idea. Because on the flip side, if Bond gets cleaned out, then the guy's got everything he needs, and they have accomplished nothing except for losing a shit ton of money.
Yeah, and funding a criminal.
Yeah. So we're introduced to Mathis, the local contact. He introduces Bond to Vesper Lind, who is, again, mentioned in the synopsis. And she is also, again, a contact, a person who's going to help him, through this process where he's going to try to beat somebody at gambling. It doesn't take too long. Rob mentioned that there's he's being surveilled, and an attempt is made on his life, also pretty early on in the book. Right? As a matter of fact, it's right after he meets Vesper Lind.
And all right, so this isn't going to be just criticizing this book the whole time, because like it wasn't like it was a wholly unenjoyable book, but like, so he leaves a restaurant after meeting Mathis and Lind, Vesper, and he's walking in the street and he clocks these 2 dudes who are like suspicious because one's got a blue camera bag and one's got a red camera bag, I believe. And so he's like, oh, something's up with these folks, but then he just kind of ignores them. And then suddenly, like, they make a quick movement and a bomb goes off. So, obviously they were supposed to be assassins and kill James Bond. It went wrong. They ended up both dying themselves. But then later on he gets intelligence about it, and they basically just botched. It was a botched assassination attempt in the dumbest way, and I don't know. That was just weird. That was weird too.
Yeah.
And the thing about it was this isn't doing anything to reinforce that James Bond is somehow good at his job. Nothing so far has made me think, oh wow, it's a good thing they sent this guy because he really knows his shit. All he managed to do was be in the vicinity of a couple of Bulgarians who fucked up assassinating him.
Yeah, I agree. And that's what I said. I don't know if James Bond morphs in the movie series to this ultra slick, action hero, but that's not what you get in this book at all. It really, and I don't know how much farther we need to go into the plot, but I don't want to say he bumbles through these things. He's doing his job, whatever job you do, right? You just get up and you do it. And there are some parts where he's in danger, but he doesn't, I don't know. I expected there to be some more either Sherlock Holmes style figuring shit out or some more action. And I guess I'm not surprised because Dr. No, the original Dr. No movie, plays out much the same way as this book did. You've got a good-looking British agent who, at some point meets a girl, and these series of events happen, and in a lot of cases, it's him escaping danger, but not through a lot of work on his own. And I felt like that was missing from this. And again, I don't know, because I can't unknow James Bond and what I think of James Bond. I grew up on Roger Moore James Bond,
Mm-hmm.
Had I have read this and this was just about some character that I'd never heard of before, would I have felt differently about this? Because in a lot of ways, this was a little bit of a letdown of the James Bond legend.
Well, it wouldn't be imagine you're a really huge James Bond fan and you're trying to get someone who's never heard of James Bond before excited about the franchise, either the books or the movies or both. And you're like, oh man, just start at the beginning. This is going to rope you in. I can't imagine that would be your pitch.
The only other thing I think I really want to say about plot is, eventually we get to the big gambling showdown. I'm obviously not going to reveal what happens there. But I will say this. I kind of expected that gambling showdown to be much later in the book than it was.
That plays into something. So did you have more on that? Because I have something about the kind of meandering plot.
No, go ahead. I was just simply saying, it felt like that was going to be the climax of the book, and
right.
Instead, I think it happens smack dab in the middle.
Yeah, it really does. It happens. It happens kind of in the middle, like you said, but also Le Chiffre as the main adversary doesn't play out this book came out in 1952. We can talk about the end of it, right?
That's yes. It's so hard because you get so accustomed to not doing it. But yeah, I don't see why we couldn't.
So I'm just going to run through some stuff. Obviously, Le Chiffre doesn't escape. He doesn't win the money back. At least James Bond, manages to do that part of his job right. He succeeds in bankrupting Le Chiffre, who then pretty much immediately I have to give it up. The ruse that was used to draw James Bond out to kidnap him, to try and find out where the money is was probably one of the more cleverly plotted things in the book. But so they use Vesper as bait. Basically, they abduct her in a very obvious way so that James Bond will follow them, and then they orchestrate catching him by making him crash his car with spikes, a spike strip kind of thing.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
This was really thought out. So they get him and they're torturing him to find out where the money is. And then again, through no skill, he didn't manufacture some cool way of getting out of this inescapable situation. Something happens where he survives she survives. And then there's this weird like love section of the book where he goes from being like almost dying through being tortured to being like in recovery, and then him and Vesper basically take a vacation together. And like he finds out that she's kind of been, you know, like lying to him the whole time.
Yep. Yeah.
And then she dies. She kills herself.
Here's what I want to say about that. I wish that would have been a twist I didn't see coming. And I say that because fairly fresh off watching Dr. No, that may just be something that happens in all Bond movies.
Like the
that
woman
the girl
always
is
double
always
crosses.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, yeah.
So really, one of the James Bond was always portrayed as this this lady killer or whatever, but it just seems like he gets duped a lot by chicks.
He's just really he's just a horny dude.
Really gullible, like buys their crap. I did give my highest, by far the highest score in any of our categories that we rate on, to the conclusion, and not so much for the things that Rob just talked about. There's a kind of an inner monologue that Bond has at the end that I was reflecting on it after I finished the book, and I thought, well, goddamn, this book introduced a character, and through the course of this, hopefully shaped the rest of his career, right? Like he kind of vows vengeance, and he's not really sure which side the good guys are, which side the bad guys are. So I felt like it really redeemed itself in my eyes. Right at the end there, because I thought this is a pretty good setup for, I don't know what comes next in the books. I'll be honest, I don't think I'm going to find out what the next 11 books were like. But I did think they did that very, very well, and that definitely drew my score up from where it would have been without that little kind of soliloquy at the end.
All right, Livius's observations just made me switch a couple of my scores, because as we were talking through this, I hadn't really thought about that, but because I hadn't thought of this book as an origin story for a character, but I think that this does set up like a personality, like it might concrete the personality of someone for future stories. So I increased my conclusion score a little bit, and I dropped my plot score, because as we talked more about the plot, I realized I had that score way too high. So I
want you guys to know it had no effect on his overall score.
No
effect. I was
effect.
trying to see what he changed. I was like, I know what his final score was. It hasn't changed.
Yeah. Without going too deep into it, one of the things that I was curious about, the girl I'm dating, I was told her I was reading this first James Bond book, which came out in the 50s, and she's like, "Oh, I wonder how much racism there is." Not as much as I expected, like almost none at all that I could see. But there is definitely some real misogyny. Like women are absolutely treated like objects. A lot in the book, especially by James Bond, and so I have to imagine that like maybe over the years that softened in the books and stuff like that. But like when they're not doing what he wants, like they're just useless. They're in the way. They're obstructing. They're not capable of things. It gets pretty negative about the ladies when they're not either letting him like hook up with them, or like doing the job the way that they're expected to.
Yeah, it was probably a little more aggressive than I expected, and I'm gonna disagree with you. I kind of doubt it softened up. This was over a course of 12 years, I think, that he wrote these books, and I know that they've been continued. There's probably 100 James Bond books by now, and yes, I am sure at some point. But I don't know. I get a feeling that's James Bond on the inside. I remember kind of thinking, again, watching Dr. No, that he was a little rough on the ladies. Now, we didn't have the benefit of what was going on in his head when you're in a movie, but there's not a lot of chivalry that I saw in Dr. No. So I feel like that may have been accurate from the books, or at least that feeling. I didn't find that shocking at all from having seen an early Bond movie.
That's a good point. And actually, like, I probably will take a minute or two to talk about, because I also watched the movie Casino Royale. midway through reading the book, and obviously, besides like some serious plot deviations, that line, the final line, Livius, is in the movie.
Oh, well,
Yeah.
that's kind of interesting.
So since we're not worried about spoiling things,
Right? Yeah.
the final line in the book is, I think, is that the bitch is dead, or that bitch is dead.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's in the movie too. In the movie, it's different though, because then M kind of like puts it in perspective and says, "Oh, well, she did this for you." So, basically implying, even if she if she double crossed you or betrayed you or whatever, she did have feelings about you. And then he kind of like, he got a little sappy about it, but yeah, that bitch is dead made it into the movie, which was fucking weird. It was
That's
a really
bizarre.
weird part. Yeah.
That movie's only a few years old, right? Like 5-6 years. I mean, it's not that long ago.
2006.
All right. Oh, all right. So when you get to be my age, that feels like 5 years
A couple
ago.
years. Yeah.
Yeah, that's interesting. Well, and it's especially interesting because you said they deviated significantly, but they didn't deviate on that.
Right. And it's especially interesting because it's not the first James Bond movie, so like I don't think it was supposed to play out like an origin, right? Although they do, like, they flashback in the beginning as a flashback to his like first 2 kills that give him the 00 designation. So it has origin kind of like ish things going on, but like most of it takes part. Obviously, he's been a 00 agent for quite a while, but yeah, it's interesting.
I'm glad that you brought that up. I guess I didn't know that that's how you became a 00 agent, is through. And I mean, I guess for anybody that's listening, and I don't know if anybody even cares about this, but it's not like he had to assassinate people. They were
Right.
kills in the line of duty, not like, hitman, like you have to go take out the, whatever, the premier of whatever country. It was more like that happened just because it happened in the course of him trying to do his otherwise fairly lame spy job from this book, and like I said, from Dr. No. But yeah, I guess it's interesting to see how that morphed into what's playing now as James Bond.
I will say that from reading this book, I was inspired by some of the fanciness that happened in the book, because we have to acknowledge, like, he was living pretty high on the hog, and yeah, Friday night I was with the girl I'm dating, and we usually pick up like some beer or whatever just to kind of have with dinner, and we picked up a bottle of champagne and we drank champagne. So
00 Rob.
I haven't killed 2 people. Wait,
Well, not yet.
at least as far as our listeners need to know.
That's true. So, all right, I'm going to kick off the wrap ups. I think we put this one to bed.
Cool.
It would be interesting to know what I would have thought about this book had it have not been, the known spy that James Bond is. That, quite honestly, there's probably a point when I was a kid, probably when For Your Eyes Only came out, I thought I could grow up and be that guy. So it was an important part of my young years, and whatever I could catch on TV of the older. Roger Moore was the one then, but oh god, I can't think of his name. The
Connery.
Bond before Sean Connery. Yep. I'd catch those when I could. Jaws was a terrifying figure, from those movies and stuff. But all of those really exuded a style and an action, like an action-packed kind of story. And this one lacked all action. Rob said it at the end. Bond doesn't even get out of the end on his own. So it was kind of hard to consolidate this book with a James Bond I grew up, in awe of. I like the conclusion. Like I said, from an origin standpoint, I did give that a 10. Everything else was basically 5, 6s. There's 1 7 in there. It was weak, but I also have to remind myself that 60 years ago, maybe all action type books were like this. Maybe it wasn't meant to be an action book. I'm not really sure what Ian Fleming was going for. But I think we owe him a debt of gratitude for creating, one of the most iconic figures ever in film. So Unfortunately, that didn't go into my score on scoring this book, and the final score averaged out to a 6.5.
I did 6.5 as well. Livius actually messaged me before we started talking, like a picture of our rating tools, and I was like, oh wow, I did not expect that. I didn't see that coming. But then again, I didn't really know how he was going to land on this. What I'm going to say is, I had a lot of similar feelings to Livius, and I think that the perspective I'm coming out of this discussion with is maybe the bullshit. Like Pierce Brosnan, like surfing on a tsunami kind of nonsense that ended up, like, the movies ended up growing into, spoiled what, you know, the original books kind of intended. That's a possibility. I don't know. There's probably a Bond historian out there that could set us straight on all this stuff. That has to exist. What I will say is, what this did for me was make me question, what spy novel do I want? Because this came in at a 6.5 for me. It was very middle of the road. There wasn't anything that was like that blew me away about it. There were parts of it that were just confusing. Obviously, the plot was problematic, but it still had a style to it, and it still had. So I think that, like, if there was anything that I walk away from this thinking, is that, like, there was a stylishness to it that kind of permeated the non-action kind of parts of the book, plus probably a pretty accurate depiction of some spy shit. So that's the good part of it. I take myself back in time to our second book we ever reviewed, which was called The Mozart Conspiracy by Scott Mariani, which is like an action spy book where this guy's like jumping off helicopters and there's explosions every 3 pages, and it's just like an action overload. That was far, far, far worse than this. But they're kind of two ends of the spectrum, where, like, I don't want, like, the unstoppable everything this person does is perfect thing. I kind of don't want the James Bond doesn't really do anything to help his situation either. So there's something that I'm looking for that's kind of in the middle. All that being said, the plot was kind of confusing. The characters were pretty well developed, but also not that compelling. There was some really weird stuff that happened, and I don't know how much of that is just a function of the time that it was written in, or whatever. But overall, yeah, this landed very kind of middle of the road for me. So yeah, 6.5, which averages out, for those people who are challenged with math, Livius is 6.5 plus my 6.5 divided by 2, 6.5.
Nicely done, showing your work there at the end.
Yeah.
I do think, I don't think you'll ever get around to it, but I do have a suggestion. David Morrell wrote some spy type books, probably right in the middle of his career. And I say that because his first book was First Blood, the Rambo book. Those, I think, might be a little more your speed. But I had another thought. I'm going in the Wayback Machine here. You know how my memory is. I'm willing to bet that we gave The Mozart Conspiracy around a 3.
Right.
And that was on a scale of 5. So if you doubled that 3 to make it a scale of 10, it would have been like a 6. I don't think it would have played out the same on this scale, but I think based on our old rating system, we probably weren't far off with James Bond and Scott Mariani.
Oh man, the temptation to go back and look is real strong.
Yeah. So I'm glad we did it, though. Sometimes you're glad you did something, because I've always, like I said, I've always been a big fan of James Bond, and it was nice to go back and read what started it all. I don't mean it to sound as bad as this likely will sound, but to know that you're not missing a lot sometimes is worth the work. Because I full on went into this book like, if this is good, because they're short, I'll read all of them. I'll read all of Ian Fleming's, whatever, the dozen or so. It's not a big deal at whatever these come in at, clocking at 200 pages or something. But yeah, I just don't feel drawn to do that now.
Yeah. This is probably one of the more interactive topics that we could have, like, because we probably have more likelihood of people having read James Bond novels or other spy novels. So I guess I'm going to hit the listeners with a couple of questions. Like, if you really loved James Bond novels, what was it that you found so compelling. If you didn't, or if you haven't read them but you've read other spy novels, what is like the proto spy novel? Like, what would be the absolute best way for someone who wants to get into reading spy novels? Like, what's the book that they should be reading?
It's an excellent question, and I'm hoping that our listeners have some answers.
They're like, oh, those Scott Mariani books are the best.
Scott Mariani is typing a harsh worded email right now.
He hasn't yet. I don't know why he would start now.
I know we have a couple other things to cover, but I did want to transition briefly into next week because I noticed that we are going from James Bond, the slickest, coolest, most iconic, cleanest, like cut guy ever in books, probably, to The Little Sleep from Paul Tremblay, which I've started, and the protagonist is the goddamn exact opposite. So we're gonna have a complete 180 from protagonist from this book to next.
Kind of excited about that though, because this is old school Tremblay. I think these were originally published in the 2000s, like the two books of those, right?
Yeah, I have to imagine so. They were before we started this podcast, so
yeah, I think 06, 07, 08, somewhere in there. That's Paul, man, he's our boy.
For anybody who's not sure, The Little Sleep is essentially a detective novel, except our protagonist has a little problem with narcolepsy.
Sorry, that made me yawn.
So does Rob, apparently.
What else? So I guess a couple of friends of the podcast merit a little bit of mention really quick. I saw on social media right before we started talking to each other tonight that it is the anniversary of the release of Craig Walwork's book Bad People, his first Tom Nolan book, and I remember really enjoying that. So if you missed our review, you can go back and check that out, or just go ahead and buy Bad People by Craig Walwork. It's got a follow-up called the Labyrinth of Dolls.
Yes.
Which is also awesome. I think we both really enjoyed both of those. So congrats on an anniversary, Craig, and everybody go buy that.
For sure. Happy anniversary. I do believe there is more Tom Nolan coming. Now is a good time to catch up on those first two. And then we want to mention a re-release of something that wasn't, I mean, it was available, but not, I don't think as widely available as this will be. The House at the Bottom of the Lake by Josh Malerman is being re-released this week. So again, there's a review available on that. Josh has been a longtime friend of this podcast as well. And of all the This Is Horror chapbooks and not novellas that we reviewed, and there was like 5 or 6, right? That one still remains my favorite.
I don't know if you know this, but there are 2 blurbs on the back of the This Is Horror release. Did you know you're one of them?
I did not.
So I just pulled out the original release of A House at the Bottom of a Lake is a This Is Horror chapbook, like Livius just mentioned, and I pulled it out because I'm like kind of proud that I have the original release, like, you know, in a print form, because I think they sent us a ebook to review and everything. And I'm looking at it and I see the back. I see 2 blurbs, and I see one is attributed to Livius Nedden, Booked Podcast. So I'm going to read this to you, Livius, because you probably don't remember what you said, right?
No recollection.
All right, you ready for this?
I am.
Malerman tests the waters of love and magic and what it means to face both as a teenager in this beautifully crafted horror story.
I think maybe I have a future as a blurb writer. Is what I'm getting from that. Yeah,
it would be cool if that made it onto the re-release, like the big publisher re-release.
Somehow I doubt that, because I'm sure that at this point he's getting much bigger names than mine.
Oh, you made it into the front too. Praise for A House at the Bottom of the Lake. There's more of them, and you are the first one. You got on before John F.D. Taff.
That's fair. I mean,
wow.
That's good to know. I'm kind of sad that I don't have a copy. I may have to track one down.
Oh, I'm sure you can find it
or something. Yep.
I will say that the original cover art by Pi Par is fucking amazing, and it actually made it. They brokered it to be the cover for the re-release on the big publisher. So the amazing art that you see on this this wide release is the original cover art, and I don't think you could find something better.
I remember that cover art well, and I would have to agree that was a smart move on their part.
Yeah, so looking forward to that.
Anything else we have for tonight? I don't think so. We already mentioned next week's episode. A couple congratulations shout outs. Oh, we do. At this point, if you are a Patreon supporter, if you live in the domestic United States, you should have received your little swag bag for being a patron throughout 2020. So we did have one that was returned. I will go with the first name, Julie. If you're listening, hit us up with a current address, and I'll resend that back out. But other than that, hopefully those are all in your hands, Patreon supporters. Except for the ones that are overseas. Those apparently take like 6 weeks or something to get there. But those are also on the way. They have all been shipped out. They've been shipped out for about, 10 days now, I think.
Yeah, it's nice to see people have started. We know this because people have started posting pictures of their swag and stuff. And so one of the ones I was excited to see landed was one of the bigger, like one of the more active supporters of the podcast, Thomas Joyce. Showed up with his pictures of him, like,
dude, he got his stuff already.
Yeah.
Okay, so last year, sorry, Thomas, I messaged Thomas about this before I sent out the package. Last year, 3 months after I sent it out, it was sent back to me as undeliverable. So I assumed it would take at least like a month for his to get there. So good, I'm glad it made it there.
Yeah, he posted a picture of all the random stuff we sent. So that's nice. I know Sean Ferguson posted a picture of him interacting with our swag. I don't know why. Should I stop being vague? Most people have it by now.
Yeah, I would imagine that.
Yeah, so we have face masks with the Booked logo on the front. So it's nice to see more people than just me walking around with a Booked face mask all the time.
There you go. Well, I hope you guys enjoy those. As always, it's fun to put that stuff together and send it out to you guys. So thank you, and thank you for your support in the last year.
Yeah. I think we're good. I don't have anything else to talk about that I can think of.
And nor do I.
All right, so,
I'm too busy trying to find a copy of A House at the Bottom of a Lake.
All right, so join us next week. We're going to talk about The Little Sleep by Paul Tremblay. Very excited about that. A, because I always enjoy Paul's books, but B, like, it's cool to like have a reason to go back in time a little bit and read one of his earlier works. So join us next week for that. Until then, I'm Rob Olson.
And I'm Livius Nedden. Keep reading.